ESKOM says Karpowership energy will not be connected to South Africa's power grid. This after the Türkiye energy giant failed to meet the 31st of December deadline. Karpowership was named as one of the preferred bidders in the risk mitigation IPP procurement program in 2020. But joining us now to help us understand the ramifications of all this is Professor Sampson Mamphweli, Head of Energy Secretariat at the South African National Energy Development Institution. Prof, always great to speak to you. Well, let's pick it up with this. ESKOM has announced that Karpowership will not be integrated into South African power grid. What factors contributed to this decision, and how does it impact the country's energy outlook?
Good evening to you and the viewers. So we know that Karpowerships were supposed to have met certain conditions for them to be able to dock their ships and be also to be able to connect to the electricity grid in South Africa. What has happened is that there have been delays that were associated mainly with the environmental authorization side of things, which have led to them not being able to plan and meet all the various conditions that are associated with that particular project. That's why, as things stand, they won't be able to connect immediately, and that then means that the risk mitigation procurement is still going to be delayed by the megawatts that were allocated to Karpowerships that were mainly brought in to basically provide a mid-term kind of a relief to the electricity grid. We know that the deal at the beginning was that they will get a short-term kind of contract. They ended up with a long-term kind of contract, which is now being reviewed by the Minister of Electricity and others. So there are those kind of nitty-gritties and negotiations that are still taking place with them, so that they can then reach some kind of agreement with government for them to be able to connect. The impact obviously is the fact that we lose out in terms of the megawatts that they were supposed to bring on board. It then means that it affects the intensity of load shedding going forward.
Now, ESKOM stated that its governance processes require projects to be delivered expeditiously within approved timelines. Could you elaborate on these governance processes and how they influence the implementation of energy projects in the country?
Yeah, so there are various processes from the environmental authorization. These projects that become successful bidders, they are given particular time frames to reach financial close, which basically means that they need to be able to go out in the market and raise funding for them to be able to build the project, and then they have set dates for them to be able to reach commercial operation. And those are some of the things that need to happen within particular time frames. On the side of ESKOM, they need to have signed a power purchase agreement first with government, and then they need through the IPP office, and then they need to sign a power purchase agreement with ESKOM that has got all those particular conditions. So those are some of the conditions that they need to meet before they can provide electricity to the national grid. They are also allocated the grid capacity in the areas where they are going to be connecting. And that allocation in the past, it didn't have a specific time frame. But because some of the projects, especially in the REAP program, have failed to reach commercial operation, or some of them have failed to raise funding, or to reach financial close in time, ESKOM is becoming quite strict in terms of how long can you then hold onto the grid capacity in the particular area.
Now, the affected projects you mentioned were intended to bring additional generation capacity to alleviate pressure on the power system and minimize the impact of load shedding. So you've just confirmed that we are in serious trouble now that Karpowership is not coming on board. So which is the less of the two evils? To penalize Karpowership and allow them to carry on with the integration of their energy into the matrix, so to speak, or to ultimately sign it off and cancel the agreement?
So the Karpowership is just one of the many measures that government has been bringing on board. In the risk mitigation, we have some megawatts that were procured from other preferred bidders. If you look at the Energy Action Plan, there are quite a number of initiatives that are there in the Energy Action Plan to deal with load shedding. So we're looking at, I think it's about 1,000 megawatts or so that will not be coming through the Karpowerships. But if you look at the various other initiatives that government has brought on board, things such as bringing in, removing the licensing requirements for people to build their own projects, and then be able to wield the power through the grid and all those kind of things. In that program alone, we're looking at about 10,000 megawatts that will be coming live between now and 2030. There are other REAP programs, procurement programs that are captured in the draft integrated resource plan as well, that are going to come on board within the next 18 to 24 months. There is a new build program or new build capacity that the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy is busy procuring, that is also part of dealing with load shedding. In the main, the government has made available money for ESKOM to service their debt, so that they can free up some money from ESKOM, so that ESKOM can then deal with the aging coal fleet that has been giving problems in terms of fixing that coal fleet so that it can operate at above 70% energy availability factor, which is where we've got the biggest problem. If that particular initiative comes to fruition, as ESKOM has been doing this with the Minister of Electricity, updating the nation, if that comes to fruition, then it's one of the major contributing factors to load shedding. Then load shedding can be dealt with quite speedily.
Now, my last question is on Karpowership, speaks to the number of extensions that they were afforded. So obviously the December 31 deadline was an extra extension amongst many others. Do you have an understanding of why they needed these extensions and continue to fail? Did they not have capacity in the first instance? Because one would imagine that if they're as big and as established an organization as we'd anticipated, that they ordinarily shouldn't be missing these deadlines, never mind the fact that they were given a number of extensions.
Yeah, so when it comes to that, the biggest issue has been the delays in the environmental authorization side of things, and a lot of what one could call noise is, for lack of a better word, around the length of the contract and the cost of that particular contract. And that was picked up by many investors around the world, because it then created a risk in terms of the investment. Therefore, they couldn't, in my view, they couldn't go out into the international market and raise funding or be able to reach financial flows for them to be able to build the ships and bring them to South Africa in time. So those two were the two main kind of glitches in terms of this particular contract. As things stand, government has not yet announced, whether they have reached a different agreement from the 20-year long contract that they had reached, because they were busy with negotiations. I remember the Minister of Electricity indicating that they're looking at something like a 5 to 6 year contract. I remember Karpowerships themselves coming on board, talking about the fact that they are ready to go into the negotiation table with government and be able to lower the contract term, so that they can then come and assist us in terms of dealing with load shedding. There are various environmental concerns that were raised, which and there was I believe there are still some appeals here and there, which is not something very bad, because it shows that our democracy works. People have got the right to raise concerns, and government and car power ships need to respond to those particular concerns and come up with an environmental management program, for instance, that responds to those particular issues and ensure that we don't have adverse environmental impact when those particular ships dock on our shores.
Professor, as always, appreciate your time. That was South African National Energy Development Institute Energy Secretariat Head, Professor Sampson Mamphweli.